Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining our webinar today. It's another one in our business support webinar series. Today we're talking about systems and processes. Just going to do a few introductions for those of you who have not joined one of these webinars before. So I'm Greg Guilford, I'm the CEO of HR Solutions, and today we have Joe Sword, who's the Head of Strategic Business Planning at Nordens. We also have a team Arden in the background helping with any technical queries that you might have as we go through. When you join, you're all on mute, but we obviously want to try and encourage you to ask as many questions as possible throughout the webinar. And to do that, you should see a chat panel that looks something similar to what's on the screen now. On that panel, there's a questions tab. If you just expand that and type your question in there, then that will come to Joe and myself, and we'll get to those questions at the end of the webinar. Please ask as many as you wish. We'll try to answer as many as we can at the end, and any we don't get to, we'll aim to wrap up on a follow-up email. We do try to make these as interactive as possible, so there are a couple of polls that we'd like you to take part in as we go through, just to sort of help Joe give you a bit more feedback on the topic that he's talking about as well. These webinars are designed to give you as much information as possible, so the screen here is just really to try and encourage you to make as many notes as possible, and there will be a particular section where Joe will ask you to sort of write a few things down because it will be part of the poll that we'll be looking at as well. So as mentioned, today's about systems and processes, and I'm now going to hand you over to Joe, who's going to run the rest of the webinar.
Brilliant, thanks Greg. Hi there everyone. So yeah, as Greg said, my name is Joe Sword. I'm the Strategic Consultancy Director at Nordens, and we've worked with thousands of businesses over the years, and because of this, we feel like we have the real ability to support and help many of you move your business to the next level, and we want to make that support available to as many people as possible. So one of the things that we did in the first lockdown was we created our Interactive Accelerator Business Advisory Program, which is based on our Wheel of Success. And there are 7 elements to our wheel, and our webinar series focuses on each of these in turn. And we strongly believe that success in these 7 areas will lead to overall business success. And on the flip side, when you look at businesses who are failing or struggling, they're generally attributed to one or more of those areas. So the 7 areas are your why, vision and goals, your sales and marketing, your mindset, your cash flow, and all 4 of those areas we've looked at in the past 4 weeks. We're going to look at systems and processes, as Greg mentioned today, and then we've got profitability and team and culture. And we feel the program that we've developed helps with some of the biggest headaches business owners face, namely advice, direction, different perspectives, and accountability. So based on this, the program will give you bespoke advice from our team and consultants and special guests that we will bring on from time to time, access to like-minded business owners from a variety of different sectors to give you different thoughts and perspectives, which also enhances your support network at the same time. And over the years, we realised that having someone offer their thoughts or perspectives from a sort of impartial or unemotional point of view is a real underrated success factor, because when we work with business owners, we see the triggers where they become overwhelmed and are just subsumed with the day-to-day running and find it very difficult to kind of put their head above the parapet, so to speak, and actually start focusing on working on their business as opposed to in their business. So when you're with other people who are maybe not as emotionally attached as you, it can be really valuable to get their insight. And finally, you'll have the team of people to hold you accountable, and that's proven to help you get results quicker. With a strong focus on goals and actions, we help you not just build momentum, but actually maintain it. And so those ingredients we found are key elements for success, and we've got a growing number of case studies from businesses and their owners who are thriving because of the program. And it's proven that by working with others in this sort of group setting can actually increase your success rate by up to 200%. So that gives you a little bit of insight into the program itself. And now on to today. So today we're going to be looking at your systems and processes, and we're going to try and create that element of interactiveness by using the polls that Greg mentioned, where you'll get the chance to share your thoughts. So the aim will be is I'll outline the area, give a few thoughts and learnings from our years of experience, and then there'll be some polls with some questions for you guys to answer. The answers will be anonymous, but what it will do is it will allow us to gauge where the majority of you are positioned on each of the areas. And as like Greg says, of course, if you have any questions or any problems, just pop a message in the chat box or give us a signal and we'll do our best to help. So moving on to the topic of systems and processes. So When we say systems, we're not necessarily talking about software completely. We're talking about the step-by-step procedures that need to be followed to ensure each function of your business runs smoothly. Now, this for a lot of entrepreneurs can be one of the most boring focuses. However, in our mind, it's so essential if you want to build the most valuable business. And a study has revealed that UK small businesses waste up to 120 days a year on admin tasks. And businesses that have good quality systems and processes minimize the unnecessary tasks and look to digitally automate others. And not only that, they're all valued a lot higher, which allows the owners to exit for more money and are also more dynamic, adaptable, and creative along the way. So they have a huge benefit to them. And a way that systems have been referred to in the past are ways to save yourself time, energy, and money. And that, the first letter of all those words, spells system. And I think it is really true. If a good quality system can save you time, which will also save you energy, and therefore will also make you more profitable, saving you money or making you have a higher level of profit in your business. And we often speak to business owners about systems and processes, and it's not one of the exciting things, it's not one of the things they instantly buy into. And they come back to us with sort of comments along the lines of, well, we should fully focus our effort into growing our business. That's more important than documenting how things are done. That's boring. We want to be out there focusing on winning work. And we do accept that documenting things are not the most exciting thing in business, but we'd also say that growing and scaling your business without systems will actually just create mayhem, as you may not have the ability to deal with the growth you're out there producing. And issues that you have in your business now will magnify as you grow. So in a way, building systems is, to some extent, it's slowing down slightly to allow you to take 10 steps forward or move at rapid pace, as opposed to taking one or two steps forward and ignoring your systems and then having to take 10 steps back when everything blows up. And I'd just like to explain a little bit more why to us systems are so important in businesses. So the 6 key areas that I feel represent why systems and processes are so essential for good quality businesses is, first things first, it creates consistency, and that will give both you, your team, and your customers comfort and trust, and it will allow them to feel relaxed and in control of the situation. The next benefit of good quality systems and processes is that they eliminate excuses. So it eliminates disputes between people following the system and management, as when there are issues, there can only be 2 reasons. The system's either not working or inadequate, or people have actually chosen not to follow the system. And if you have robust systems in place, it will always be the latter, in which case there's no excuse and nowhere to hide for anyone not willing to follow the systems. And it therefore helps you create that no excuses culture. Because we see it a lot with businesses where there's the reason and the excuse people give for not doing things is, oh, I didn't realise you wanted it like that. If you have a really clear and well-defined system that ideally your team have signed off on, there can't be that excuse anymore. It eliminates all those grey areas. Because of this, the systems drive efficiencies. So the phrase lean and mean comes to mind here. Having systems and processes operating properly will make your business efficient, which will generate cost savings in the absence of wasted time and errors from not having that consistent process and therefore multiple ways of doing things. It also avoids over-reliance. So having good quality systems in place, you remove over-reliance on any one person, especially yourself, which allows you to spend more time, like we said, working on your business and less time working in it. It also acts as a way to generate ideas through testing. So preparing systems and never testing them is as bad as to some extent worse than not bothering to prepare the systems in the first place. So regularly test your systems. In this fast-paced world we live in, you need to keep testing them to ensure that they remain the most efficient way of doing things. So by you regularly testing your systems, you create that culture of challenging the norm and looking at ways of improving things. And when this is done right, it allows you and your team to actually express yourself and champion change while putting their own stamp on things, which will increase their buying at the same time. And as we've just mentioned, ultimately your business will become more valuable because of them. There's no doubt whatsoever that your business will be more profitable in the short term and more valuable in the long term by having good quality systems in place. And to tell you, put it into a bit more kind of real world context, if you look at McDonald's, one of the largest and well-known businesses in the world, their whole model is centered around systems and processes that are clear and easy to follow. because they basically created the system for making fast food of consistent quality quickly. And they did this by putting a foolproof system in place. And this allowed them to magnify and franchise quickly and enable people from all walks of life to get involved and become successful with the one condition only: they follow the system. And some of you that are listening on today may have seen the film that's been released about McDonald's and their sort of rise to where they are. It's called The Founder, stars Michael Keaton, I think, and it's a really good watch because it really touches on systems and processes specifically, but there's a lot of good other business elements in it, and I think it's on Amazon Prime. So if anyone hasn't watched it and has Amazon Prime, check it out because it's well worth a watch. So you may have come across the phrase systems and you may have come across the phrase processes. So in what's the difference? So the way I think of a system is the overall guide to a particular business segment. So for example, the system for your finance function. And within that system, there'll be lots of processes or steps that you follow to make up the overall system, such as rating invoices, cross-checking payments, chasing overdue debts. And the systems don't have to be those 100-page long manuals you may think they need to be. Often checklists, flowcharts, or video guides nowadays work just as well or even better. It just needs to be really clearly documented so someone could follow the steps and understand how they flow through to the end goal. Another benefit of building a system and a process in the segments of your business is it enables you to critically evaluate whether that particular process is necessary, and just as importantly, why. Because what that will do is it will help you dispose of the activities that are not resulting in enough benefit, or motivate you to carry them out and communicate them as you've refreshed yourself on just how important they are. And once the system's built, like we mentioned, it needs to be really regularly tested and updated to keep up with the ever-changing landscape. Regularly testing it will ensure that you stay as lean as possible, and often building and testing the business systems generate those light bulb idea moments that you can capitalize on. Because as you're talking through your processes, all of a sudden you're saying, well, that's a bit of a long process. Do we need to do that? Do we need to do it to that degree? Do we need to do it to that length? And it will either be yes or no, but we can improve it and tweak it. So it really is worthwhile refreshing yourself. So the first poll for everyone today will be around how much of your business is systemized. So how many of the segments in your business have a real clear system and process in place? So effectively, someone could be given the systems manual, however it is, and they'd understand what they need to do to achieve the result. So there's a few metrics there. So less than 25, 26 to 50%, 51 to 75, and then above 76%. So give you a minute or so. I think Greg will close it once most people have answered, but just be honest, just be really honest, put in what you feel represents your business in terms of how systemized it is right now, and we'll see where everyone stands.
Cool, about 60% of people have done it so far, so just give it a few more seconds for the rest of you still deciding.
Brilliant.
Okay, I'm going to close it and share the results now.
Okay, so no one feels that their business is fully systemized. It's probably realistic. There probably aren't that many businesses out there that have everything done to a T. Quite a lot of you, though, well over half, have said that up to 3/4 of your business is systemized. Fantastic. So I think for those of you, maybe have a little look and see what areas aren't. And obviously, we'll come on to the level of importance of different systems and whatever else shortly. But that's a good starting point for sure. How can we get that closer to 100%? For those of you 26 to 50%, similar sort of situation. What systems can you update or improve or actually create to move you into that further barrier where more of your business is systemized, more of your business is therefore consistent, and it will hopefully relieve some of your time as the business owner. And for those of you less than 25%, that could be from anywhere from 0%. I would really consider that as part of your action plan, especially now we're into this period where restrictions are lifting, hopefully business is getting back to sort of pre-pandemic level and you can start to thrive. I think really important to have a little look and say, how many of our processes are potentially falling down? How many of them are open to manipulation? And maybe look at, we'll talk about this shortly, about the most time-consuming tasks that you are doing at the moment, and how can you systemize that to filter that down to other people? So it's good that we've got a good range. People have been very honest there as well. And I suppose in an ideal world, your systems would all be there now ready. But we don't live in that perfect world. So those businesses who need to work on their systems, we recommend to work out the areas, firstly, that you like the least. And then also what are the most time-sapping, inconsistent, and generally least productive areas? These are often where you should start, as they're probably the areas you focus on the least and the ones that are potentially making you the most ineffective. So you'll get the best results for systemizing and streamlining these areas first. A good system, in our mind, comprises of three key elements. So firstly, the purpose is explained. People will buy in much more when they know why something is important. So it's really important to make it really clear why we are doing this. I've had this myself when I've tried to bring in a new system and the team didn't really understand why we were doing it. As soon as I've explained why it's important and how it feeds into the bigger picture of what we're trying to achieve, all of a sudden, they may have saw it as a necessary evil, but they were still committed to doing it the way we wanted it done because they knew it would contribute to that end goal. So it's really important to explain the purpose. Otherwise, people might just be thinking, well, what's the point? It's just waste of time. It's an added bit of red tape that we don't need to comply with. The next key point is that each stage needs to be clear and specific. So you're able to move through each stage of the process quickly and efficiently. And finally, every stage can be measured. So at every stage, you can say yes or no to the question, is it done? Anything other than that renders your system inadequate, and you need to either add a step or revisit it, because you really need to be saying, step one, is it done? Yes. Okay, step two, is it done? No. Right, that's where you are. You can't be having that, well, it's kind of done, because that's when things start falling down. So it really appears simple, and to an extent it is. But a lot of businesses hold back and don't take the leap to build their systems as they feel it's too big of a job, too time consuming, or just too boring. But guess what? As the business evolves, there will be more inconsistencies as there's more activities in the business that are unsystemized. So there really is no better time to start. But remember, you don't need to systemize everything in one go. That wouldn't be what we would recommend. We wouldn't recommend you taking your focus off from growing your business, doing your sales and marketing, doing the other areas you do, to just fully focus on systems. But what we would recommend is work on that one inefficient area, start building up momentum and go from there. You do need to remember as well that obviously things, times and technology change. So once what you had originally was potentially a brilliant system will then be potentially rendered useless if you don't continue to monitor and test it like we mentioned earlier. So regularly testing your systems can't be stressed enough. And while having that good system in place is a great starting point, without you testing it regularly, you're at risk of running a really inefficient or even obsolete system, which in some cases can be worse and more time consuming than not even having the system in the first place. So I'd like to open the polls again. We talked about how much of your business actually has a system in place. The next question for today is about how often do you actually test those systems? So do you test them monthly? Do you test them quarterly? Do you test them yearly? Or are you honest and you just don't test them? You put it in place and just run with it and leave it. So again, yeah, a minute or so to just jot down your thoughts, just be honest again, and we'll see. And there isn't really a right answer other than we'd like to see everyone testing their systems, but some systems don't need to be tested as frequently as monthly. But it would just be good to get a gauge of how often you are doing it.
So about 65% completed so far. So we'll just give it a few more seconds before we share the results. Just while we're waiting, yeah, if you've got any questions you want to ask Joe, please do put them in the Q&A panel and we'll ask as many as we can and get as many answers for you. Okay, I'm just going to close the poll.
Okay, that's quite interesting. So 70% of you are saying that you don't test your system. So I think straight away, hopefully from what we've said and the benefits that I've mentioned of testing them is it's so valuable, because not only will it potentially allow you to remove elements of the system that are now obsolete, it will actually give people that you're working with on testing the systems the ideas that, you know what, there's a better way, there's a more creative way, there's a quicker way of doing this, there's a more effective way of doing this. As soon as you start testing that, it can really give you big benefits quickly. Those of you that are testing your systems yearly, like I said, there may be a reason for testing systems only once a year. It might not be necessary to test them any sooner, but I would evaluate that and see, well, maybe do we need to be a bit more, do we need to be doing it a little bit more frequently? Quarterly seems like a decent amount of testing time, because generally a lot of the systems in the business won't change significantly between monthly and quarterly. But again, it's worth looking at, should they be tested more frequently? Should we even consider them more frequently? Because certain systems in businesses do move at a fast pace. But I'd say if you're testing every system in your business on a quarterly basis, I think you're in a pretty good place, to be honest. And the systemization projects we've carried out for clients, because we do this quite a bit with the clients that we work with, where we go in and help them systemize elements of their business and areas of their business. What it's done is it's really increased their day-to-day efficiency, but also the business owner's control. And in the process, obviously, like we said, it adds huge value to their business. But what it allows, the business owner's control was massive. They've come back to us and given us feedback to basically say, like, look, before this, I didn't really have control of where we were. Now we've got these systems in place, I can just get told where we're up to with things, and I feel really comfortable and in control because that system's in place and it's robust. And I know there's no get outs or grey areas. So it's a really, really good thing to help give you as a business owner that control. So this is why we've selected systems and processes as a key focus of the Interactive Accelerator program in its own right, and a segment of the wheel. And our members have found it really useful to hear and be able to understand the different perspectives on building systems, why they're important in their business, and why certain systems and certain ways of doing things are better than others. And the different perspectives that the business owners have used when implementing their systems, as it helps reassure them that they're on the right track, or actually just pinpoint something that they may have missed when looking at building their own. So another important thing to consider when looking at your systems and processes is the ability to digitalize and automate those mundane time-sapping tasks. So what we're going to do now is put up on the screen 10 key questions, and you might want to note these down as you go along throughout today, because these are all triggers that you potentially could benefit in your business from some form of digital automation. So the questions are: if a key second level manager evaporated, would you struggle to know current client current client progress? So would you struggle to know where you're at without that person there to tell you? Do you have more than 10 internal spreadsheets? This is what we see a lot with businesses, where they have multiple spreadsheets that don't talk to each other. They're very susceptible to human error. Do you have a physical server on site? If all of your office computers disappeared overnight, would you lose data? If your office internet had connection issues, would your business struggle? Are your office phones traditional phone lines? Do you get through more than 10 packs of A4 paper per month? If your email accounts were deleted, would you lose important data? Do you struggle in getting your individual software systems to speak to each other? This is another really common one. And are you ever concerned about a lack of transparency across the business? So we're going to open the polls again. Taking those 10 key questions into account, how many of you answered yes to? How many of them apply to you in your business? And the options are 0, 1, 2, or 3 or more. So yeah, again, we'll let you answer that and see how many of those apply to your business, because I think they are really, really clear triggers for potentially some form of digital automation can make your business more streamlined. So we'll see how you get on with that and see how many of those questions you actually answered yes to. And again, just be honest. I think that's most important.
Okay, about 60% of people have answered so far, so just give it a few more seconds. Okay, I'm going to close and share the poll.
Okay. Only one of those apply to 13% of you, so therefore you seemingly in a pretty good place. But for the rest of everyone that said 3 or more, you're likely to meet the criteria for some form of digital automation. And if you're interested in hearing more, just drop us a line after this webinar and we'll be happy to have a chat with you to explain how we can help. And we've done this with quite a lot of businesses, because back in the day, say 4 or 5 years ago, it wasn't as easy, and it definitely wasn't as maybe as cost effective to look at this digital automation. But I think nowadays we really can make the most of it, and it's not an extortionate price that it once was. And a couple of things that we've done. So we've worked with a particular business on the whole digital automation process in one segment, and it's actually allowed them to remove the job role itself. So they basically employed someone full-time to do something. We've managed to digitally automate that. So that team member is now completely free to work on something more creative and valuable in the business. We've also worked with clients where an admin task they were doing was taking up to 2 to 3 days a month, and that's completely been removed now because of the digital automation. So there's a bit of work behind it, but remember, it's the long-term benefit as well. You're removing 2 to 3 days a month in this particular instance, but that's forever. You know, you've got that 2 to 3 days a month back every single month forever. So it's really, really important to consider the opportunities that are now out there with the digitalization of things. And to sort of sum up systems and processes, you don't have to like putting together systems and processes, but you should accept their importance to the current efficiencies and future success of your business. And one thing I'd recommend is to really look at enlisting that systems champion within your business wherever possible, because that removes the sort of operational responsibility from yourself, and therefore it allows you to do more creative things and continue to bring the business forward, knowing that you've got someone to support you with the systems in the background. And again, consider exploring your options around digital transformation. So I think that brings an end to our sort of whistle-stop tour on systems and processes. So I'd like to open the floor to a few questions now, because many of you may have questions around what we've discussed today. And yeah, just fire away, honestly, just any questions that you've got around systems and processes that may be unique to your business or just in general, fire away.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Yeah, we've got a couple of questions that have come in for you. So the first one was around, how do you get people to buy in following the systems?
Okay, so yeah, so I think to try and get people to buy in, which is often one of the biggest struggles, I think that all comes from the sort of the purpose behind the system and how that's communicated, like we touched on earlier. I think as we've looked at today, systems and processes are really important components of successful and valuable businesses, as they give that business owner that consistency and clarity, and ultimately allow you to deliver your product or service to the highest standard possible as often as you possibly can, as well as enabling you to scale quickly. So I think dropping those things in and explain how building, testing and following the systems will add to not only the business's progression, but that person's progression, and ideally make their lives easier, and also to help assist them when they have time off, for example. I feel they'll buy in pretty soon. If not, you really have to look at whether they're the right fit, whether that individual's the right fit for your business, because really, if the system's important to you, if the system makes sense, if the system's worthwhile having, it should be relatively easy to explain the longer term benefits of using it. Another great way to encourage buying is to actually get them directly involved and help them, make them champion certain elements of the systems. It doesn't have to be you as the business owner putting all the systems together, as we've mentioned. So if you can find yourself that systems champion within your business, you can empower them to sort of help you put it together, and you can simply review it if needed at all. And that's sensible delegation, because it saves you time and gives them something to actually take responsibility for at the same time. So there are a few tips that I would give in terms of getting people to buy in, that's for sure.
Yep. Yeah, some good tips there, Joe. So the other one, sort of follow on from that, really is sort of, where do I start? How do I know what processes I should look at in terms of moving to more of a system first?
So in terms of where to start, I think the key thing I would look at would be, have a look at your business and say, right, well, if I could change one thing, or what's the one thing that doesn't quite work? What's the one thing that takes up most of my time? Or what's the one thing I enjoy the least in my business? You've probably heard me say it pretty much every webinar that we've done about what's that one thing. And I think starting small is a really effective way to get results and build momentum. So I think if you start looking at that one thing in your business and say, right, okay, why doesn't it work properly? Where are the pitfalls? How can we kind of tidy that up and shore that up to stop these pitfalls happening, to stop the time being wasted. Document how you believe it should work, and then whether you use a digital system or whether you use a manual system, but it's just clearly documented, straight away you'll be in a much better position to move forward. So I think in simple answer to the question of where to start, it would be start with that one thing that's probably the least enjoyable or the most time consuming, and start with that. Make good, because you'll get good results quickly from doing that, and you'll be able to see the benefit much quicker than maybe other things that are maybe not as a pressing an issue at the moment. So that's where I've sort of have my initial focus on.
Yeah. Sort of following on from that a little bit is, do you have any tips on how best to test the system? So I guess you've already moved to a system, but how are you going to test that those systems are working?
Yeah. So I think if the system is clear and it's well documented, it should be quite easy to test it. The one thing that I've done in the past is actually show the system to someone unrelated to the area in question and just see if it makes sense. I wouldn't maybe expect them to know all the technical elements that would form part of carrying out that process, but just if the flow makes sense. And if it makes sense to them, the chances are that it's likely to be robust enough. Another good tip when you're looking about testing it is go through your system step by step and ask why at every step of the process, because that will get you thinking. So step one, we do this. Why do we do this? Step two, we now do this. Why do we do this? Because as long as you can consistently answer, well, we do this because we have to do this because otherwise we're not able to do that. Okay, it seems to make sense. But if you're sort of scratching your head and saying, well, I don't really know why we do this, we've just always done it this way, chances are that that might actually be able to be manipulated, or might actually be able to be removed, or tweaked or manipulated to be changed, where you don't have to spend as much time on it. Because we're not here trying to try and waste time, build more time, create more steps that are not necessary in your business. We're actually trying to create the opposite by just making a much more streamlined and consistent way of working. So I think critically evaluate whether you need each step and the purpose that step serves.
Great. And then just sort of following on a little bit is, how important is it to look at digital options?
Yeah, so I think, like we sort of closed off with, I think personally it's really, really important. And if you want to get ahead, or even nowadays just to keep pace, you really need to sort of embrace your options in terms of efficiencies that come from technology here. The good news, though, is that, like we've sort of alluded to, there are just so many options out there nowadays. And what was once kind of a bit more of an expensive luxury is now much more feasible and affordable. And I just feel that businesses waste too much time with inefficient systems and processes, and therefore really lose out on opportunities and chances to grow and innovate. And looking at ways to make your processes more efficient and less time consuming is a really good way of addressing that balance, because we see it quite a lot. Business owner, the number one thing would be, give me back more time, please let me have more time, I just don't have enough time. And chances are, if they really critically evaluate everything they did and therefore everything people in their business did, there's probably a lot of wastage there. So I think really critiquing what you do as a starting point is really, really important, and building that into a consistent system, you'll definitely become and start striving ahead of others, because not everyone will be willing to do this. So if you're able to, and you're able to take the lead, I think you'll have a much better chance of being successful as opposed to your competitors who potentially won't be.
Yeah, just to sort of build on that digital options, normally the digital option allows you to have your real-time or close to real-time information as well, if you're looking at reporting and stuff like that, which enables you to sort of understand customers better and quicker and answer their queries as well. And I guess in terms of automation pieces as well, it allows you to automate some tasks. Like Xero is far ahead in terms of when you compare it back to Sage and stuff like that, because you can save time with invoice reminders and integrates with a lot of different apps to get payments in, so you don't have to chase customers, and free up your accounts team's time chasing debt, which you wouldn't get with a sort of traditional manual system. You have to run a report and get someone on the phone chasing it. But it's definitely a good place to start. And then sort of, I think we've probably covered this a little bit, but when is the best time to think about switching up a system and process which isn't necessarily working?
So I think it's always good to be sort of testing your systems and looking at areas to improve. And so I think as soon as you spot a weakness, I think it's really a good time to pounce on it. You know, unless there's a real benefit and you can say to yourself, I'm going to wait because, and it actually makes sense when you repeat it back to yourself, I think you should just crack on straight away and improve that process, because the longer you've got inefficient systems, the longer the inefficiencies will be in your business, and the less sort of availability you and the rest of your team are going to have to work on more meaningful tasks, or to not be wasted doing things that they don't need to be doing. So I'd say literally as soon as possible. And yeah, I think you make a good point on the previous one, Greg, about how Xero as a company has really embraced the digital and the needs of businesses to get that real-time information. And I think nowadays, because off the back of that, a lot of technology companies have started to spread that not just around the finance function, but all around the operations within the business, and start working with small and medium-sized businesses especially to get rid of those 10 different spreadsheets that don't actually talk to each other, and actually bring it all into one fused system, so you can actually, like you said, get the real-time information, because ultimately that helps you make good decisions. We say this a lot to our accounts clients when we just see them once a year, or they only want to speak to us once a year to just get their tax bill. Like, if that's what they want, we can't really force them otherwise, but we try and encourage them to see the bigger picture, to say, look, if we had monthly catch-ups or even quarterly meetings, you'd be able to see your progression throughout the year and maybe make decisions before you got to that point that will leave you in a better place by the end of the year. So I think that regular communication, coupled with real-time, as close as possible to real-time data, it will just leave you miles ahead of so many other of your competitors.
Yeah, I just think just one sort of last point before we move on is that those companies had good processes pre-COVID probably benefited, and if anything, looking back at a process over the last 12 months, there was probably lots of things people stopped because they just couldn't do it anymore, because spreadsheets all over in different places, and people working from home, like not able in that interaction to make it work. So I would imagine there's been quite a few processes that just stopped happening because people realized they didn't need that information anymore. It wasn't as important as they thought it was.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, that's I'm going to move forward now. So any other questions we've got that we didn't get to, we'll try and follow up after the webinar. So yeah, hopefully you've all made lots of notes as we're going through this session. Joe just trying to make it as interactive as possible. It's not as easy to do, obviously, in a webinar, but we've tried to use the polls as much as possible, and hopefully you've got lots of information from Joe today. As Joe mentioned at the beginning, it's a series he's been running with us. So today was on systems and processes, and we have 2 more webinars left, which is profitability and team and culture. And we'd just like to run a little poll just to see if you are signed up for the next webinars. So just let us run that poll. So I'm not going to leave this for too long, but it's just always nice for us to see who's signed up for the rest of the sessions. So yeah, 83% have signed up, and 17% are going to sign up. So that's great. Looking through the delegate list, I've seen some familiar faces on familiar names who've come to previous ones as well. So it's good to see you back. And obviously, as Joe was mentioning, it's part of an interactive accelerator program that they run as well. And this is just a kind of flavour of what gets covered in those sessions. So I'm just going to do a quick poll if you want to find out any more information about the program that Joe runs, and we'll share your details with Joe so he can follow up with you. Just going to leave that a few more seconds. Okay. So as mentioned, we've got the next 2 webinars coming up. So profitability is on the 26th of May and team and culture is on the 2nd of June. There will be a link to those after this webinar, so you can sign up if you haven't already, for those that you haven't. We've also got another webinar this month on coronavirus, returning to work after lockdown. So if you haven't signed up, tomorrow actually, if you haven't signed up and you want to attend, then there'll be a link for that as well on the follow-up email from today. If you want to sign up to our newsletter, then please do. There'll be a link on the email to make it easy for you. If not, it's on the screen as well. And as mentioned, any questions we didn't get to answer today, we'll forward those to Joe and he'll come back to you directly. We'll also ask for your feedback on the follow-up email in terms of the webinar and anything else we can do to improve the series that we've been running and any other future webinars that you'd like to hear as well. That just leaves me to say thank you again to Joe for another insightful session. We look forward to seeing the rest of you on the upcoming webinars as well.
Thanks, Greg. Thanks, everyone.
See you soon.
See ya.